spooky friends. Welcome, welcome to another episode, or your first episode if it's your first episode, of Scary-ish with me, Robin Grace, and Adam Diaz over here.
Woo! That usually goes somewhere in that intro, which was just so weird this time. Hello,
I thought I would welcome all our new listeners, because I'm sure we do have quite a few new ones.
You think we have a bunch of people jumping on the bandwagon for episode 97?
Who knows? But if you are, welcome.
So what are we going to be covering this episode, Robin?
So I'm going to be covering another serial killer for my season of serial killers.
That's fun. I'm going to be covering the Catacombs of Paris because they're very interesting and very scary. And the original topic I was going to cover needs significantly more research.
Is that related to like Plaster of Paris?
Yeah, same exact thing, actually. I don't even know what you just said, to be honest with you. But for those of you who are tuning in hoping to hear ghost stories that come from our listeners, those are called homegrown horrors. I kind of gave it away, but Robin, what's a homegrown horror?
Homegrown horrors are the supernatural, paranormal, spiritual experiences that you've had, or your family or friends have had and have shared with you, and you want to share them with us. And we've had a whole bunch of different stories. We have a lot of stories where it's like animals that have come to you, and it's like a member of your family that's come
to me, jungle friend,
that have come to visit you, or
like spirit animals when someone passes away, type of stuff.
And then there's the funny ones where it's absolutely coincidental. Things happen that just scare the crap out of you,
but it turns out nothing was actually like paranormal at all.
So send those to us. How do they send them to us?
If you would like to send a story like that, please email storytime@scarish.com, or you can go to our website scarish.com and click on contact us, fill out that form. It comes directly to us, or hit us up on any of our social medias. Facebook.com/scarishpodcast is our Facebook. We also have Twitter @scarishpod and Instagram @scarishpodcast. We get a lot of interaction on Instagram. I absolutely love it. Don't stop. In fact, if you haven't messaged us on Instagram, you should probably just do that because it's so much fun.
Don't swamp our inbox.
Swamp it so hard. Swamp it hard. Which is a weird hashtag, so I'm not going to say it swamp it hard. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you folks. It's really fun to interact with the listeners. And when you reach out to us and let us know, like, hey, I just started listening, it's really nice to know that we're picking up new people. And we already know the names of so many people that have been listening for so long because we are on episode 97. It's nice to see that some of you guys are still out there and you are still in touch with us. So
yeah,
you're going to be covering who this week, Robin?
John Wayne Gacy.
I
finally did it. I know I've been saying like I'm going to do it this past couple weeks, and I haven't, but I'm finally.
We get into the office to write our scripts for the last 2 weeks, and it's been I'm going to do John Wayne Gacy, and then she sits down, she's like Jeffrey Dahmer. So it's nice that he's finally getting his day in the sun. Not really. I'm going to be covering Catacombs in Paris. I already said that. I think I am going first. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
So this week I started out by doing some research on the topic that I teased last week. And I'm not sure how many of you heard it since I teased it during the outro, and so many of you probably didn't hear that because once we get to the outro, I feel like a lot of people move on to their next podcast. But
I think we add a lot of funny stuff at the end.
Yeah,
though.
You should listen to the outro, folks. Like we do some of our best work there.
No,
I mean, sometimes. But that topic is about real human beings out there, and I want to make sure that I've done my due diligence before I put it into the show because I kind of know the story. I know a little bit about the story behind the story from some friends of ours who had talked to us. But I want to, like, since these are real folks, give everyone their due and make sure I have as much information collected as is humanly possible because I don't want to just toss out blanket statements or suppositions or anything like that about people that actually exist. So because I didn't feel like research was complete enough, I decided to cover a topic that I've been wanting to cover for some time, and it's the site of one of the horror movies that we've seen in recent times that I actually thoroughly enjoyed, which was As Above, So Below.
Which is one of our recommendations. If you folks go to our Patreon, patreon.com/scarishpodcast, I made a list of different horror things you can watch on Netflix. And then on our website, scarish.com, you guys can check a whole nother list of a whole bunch of other horror films that we enjoy. You guys can check those out. So go do that.
Cool. And there are those of you who have seen the movie already know what I'm talking about, but for those of you who don't know, that's where the Catacombs of Paris are the setting for this movie. So that's what I'm covering. And if you didn't know, the Catacombs of Paris are catacombs in Paris. So
no
figure.
way.
Something that lots of places have to deal with when they have a high population. And we've been to Japan, and during our tour, we were told about how the Japanese deal with this particular situation, but having a very limited amount of space, you suffer from crowding. There's just too many people for such little space, and the Japanese are all about efficiency. But in Paris, they actually suffer from this as well, and it doesn't just apply to the living. So in Paris, in the mid to late 1700s, it became very apparent that the graveyards all over the town were basically beyond capacity. And it reminds me of that scene, actually, in A Million Ways to Die in the West, where the guys walk up during the guy's mom's funeral with like 2 bodies on their shoulders, like, can we get on this grave?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, sure. And they just toss like 2 bodies in there with his mom. Like when you start running out of places to put your dead, it very quickly becomes a very serious problem. And in the 1770s, there was actually a plague in Moscow that killed close to 70,000 people. And of all the things that are known to spread plague, like rats, a lot of the things that people are most afraid of are corpses. Because if someone died of something infectious, you don't want it to be exposed in any way, shape, or form for it to be spread after someone has passed away. And France is no stranger to plagues. They've literally lost millions of people, even at this time, to the documented history of disease that has gone through their country because they've been around for so long.
So from what I know of catacombs, it's all bones stacked on top of each other, right? How do you know which one's your family member?
You don't really. You just know the area that your family member is supposed to be in if it was documented. But we're going to kind of get there.
Okay.
So when the problem arises that dead bodies are literally piling up, people were definitely concerned that this needed to be addressed. Like, that's something that you would run on if you're a politician, where it's like, I'll clean up the dead bodies. Like, that's the main issue of the election that year.
I have so many questions because I'm just like, well, do they strip the bones, like the meat off the bones, so they can stack them? Or do they wait till it rots so they can stack them?
Well, most of the folks had already become bones, and the rest of them were in remains in boxes that would be transferred.
Okay.
So that's kind of what they moved. But she's just jumping way ahead on this. I'm just going to jump ahead on all this John Wayne Gacy stuff. He was a clown. All right.
What the fuck?
So Paris just so happened to also have a massive network of underground tunnels beneath it that were mines that already existed, and they were already really, really old. They were created and used in the 1500s. They were mining limestone, I'm pretty sure, to help build the city. And eventually they stopped using them, and there are some areas that were mostly mined out, and actually some of these areas collapsed. But the network itself was also really, really long. Like, they twist their way underneath that city and come in right around 185 miles of tunnels and pathways that we know about. So, and for reference, I think around 30 of it is actually open to the public and you can go on tours. So there's around 150 miles of like uncharted, like kind of mapped out from like old maps, but you just don't go there. 150 miles of underground catacombs in Paris that could still hold bodies or just bones. And it's like kind of terrifying to think about how much of the city underneath it is basically one giant crypt, you know?
It's scary. I can't imagine taking a tour down there. I mean,
yeah, and they do the tours.
I'm sure it's really cool, but at the same time, that shit's haunted. It's gotta be haunted.
Well,
if you want ghosts, that's how you get ghosts.
What's funny is it was probably haunted before they put any bodies down there because it was a mine. You know, mines collapse, people die. So that was just something that had already happened. But the Department of General Quarry Inspection at the time was like, yo, dogs, like, you know that old spooky mine underneath the city? Let's fill them with the bones and remains of dead people. Problem solved. And even though I kind of joke around about that, realistically, that's a pretty solid idea. It's like you basically have the world's biggest grave dug underneath your city that you're just going to move all these people to so you can free up some space. And they went ahead with it. You have this look on your face.
I
like
just
you want
can't
to say
wait
something.
to get into mine because it's just going to be so great.
Oh, God.
Because you're doing yours first. It's going to be perfect.
So,
perfect.
Perfect? Not just perfect. Perfect. In 1785, they started moving the remains out of the Saints Innocents Cemetery, which was, at the time, the largest cemetery in Paris. They figured if we can clear out this first one, it's a good start. And that cemetery had been used for literally 1,000 years in 1780. And they were like, place is closed, sorry. It was at capacity. They couldn't put any more bodies in that cemetery. That is why they started with that one. And as much as this idea might horrify you, the logistics of it, the people that had to plan how they were going to do this must have been just like aghast with the details they would have to go through. Like, they were going to move basically a bunch of either recently dead or long, long dead people to this new location.
So they have to differentiate, right? Who's fresh, who's not so fresh.
Well, in certain cases they can, in certain cases they can't. And I'll kind of get to that because they weren't just moving a few people, and they weren't just moving the plebs either. Like, they moved a lot of people. And this
plebs?
Is what... Yeah, the plebeians.
I know what a pleb is, but
then why are you questioning me?
How can you say, like, a dead body is a pleb?
Well, it's not like they were moving poor people who were just buried in graves and they were leaving the people that were in, like, family tombs. Like, they moved everyone.
Even the tombs?
Yeah.
I'm so curious. This is a really interesting topic to me.
Okay, I mean, they weren't going to move the tombs themselves. They were moving the bones. They were moving the remains. They basically had to hire people, additional staff, and they told them, like, move the remains at night. Don't do it during the daytime. People will be upset. Even though they know this is what we're doing, people will freak the fuck out. And they would go into the cemetery and empty out the remains of regular graves, charnel houses, family tombs, the works. And for those of you who don't know, a charnel house is a building or like a vault, so it looks like a tomb, in which corpses or bones are just piled up. So it's basically like the junk drawer filled with dead people. And you know how if you have a junk drawer in your house, it eventually doesn't close or open because it's too full? Like, they were all at that point.
So if you had a family tomb and they take your bodies out of them, I mean, you pay for that, like, mausoleum or that.
You're probably just going to get, like, primo space in the new catacombs for you to go visit your relatives.
But wouldn't the mausoleum be named, like, labeled your name?
Probably.
I'm just mind blown. That's so rude.
You're the person that would be in the meeting during the 1770s where they're like, look, bodies are spilling out into the streets. You're like, I paid for that fucking mausoleum and you're going to leave my family's bones in there. And they don't want to tell you, like, there's like 20 other families' bones in there. Like, we had no other place to put them and you don't come and visit your grandmother or whatever. So that's just where we stacked them up.
Okay.
These charnel houses are basically like tombs, but they're just stacked up with dead bodies and bones. And it's like, that's the sort of shit we're dealing with here when it came to like the overcrowding. And as much as the image of like opening a closet and a pile of stuff falling out is in your head, replace that with like a sliding stone door of some sort and a pile of bones and bodies just falling out.
Well, how do you stack them in there?
The cemetery workers are just like, okay, cool, and they start picking them up off the ground. I don't know. I didn't research body stacking techniques. Sorry. I can just tell you that this place was jam-packed.
Okay.
If you think the dudes transporting the bodies and the bones had a shitty job, there were people in the mines who were just waiting for these bones and bodies to be delivered who were in charge of stacking the remains being brought to them. And I don't know before you ask, like, what the orders were on how they were going to stack these things.
The pictures that I've seen of the catacombs,
which will be posted to our Instagram.
It looks so pretty.
It is.
They
and
do
like,
such a good job.
This is
Kudos.
The thing. This would be a pretty regular thing for them to be moving these bodies and these bones for around 30 years, with the place opening up to the public in 1809. And you're asking all these questions about, like, well, if that's my family tomb, blah, 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 blah. Well, you be told, like, you can go to the catacombs and visit your relatives, but you have to make an appointment first. And I can't imagine the waiting list for that because they've been moving so many people. And it was 1809. It's not like you can just call up and make your appointment. You had to go somewhere and make your appointment and hope it was someday you could actually go. And what's most hilarious about this place to me is that they had it officially consecrated on April 7th, 1786. To be consecrated is basically to be made holy, or like to be given this higher purpose. Sure, I guess. But they consecrated this place. I like how you just decide that that's some place witches can't go because it's consecrated.
Have you never seen Hocus Pocus?
I've seen Hocus Pocus, but I don't think Hocus Pocus is the most accurate description of witches or the Wiccan, who we have a very large audience of, by the way.
Which is crazy. You guys
I think
are
they
awesome.
would walk in and they'd be like, oh, look at this. I'm totally okay right now. But they consecrated this place. And then they decided they're going to get it all set up. We're going to invite the public, and we're going to make sure they come in through the official entrance. Like, does anyone have a name for the official entrance? And I bet a bunch of hands went up, and they decided on the gates of hell. So I think it literally translates to gate of hell. And that's the name of the official entrance to get into the catacomb, which is hilarious to me because it's like this consecrated holy place has an entrance called the gate of hell.
Well, okay, so in that movie, As Above, So Below, they have to travel further in, like way further in, till they get to that point.
They're looking for a literal gate of hell. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but is it... Okay, so in the movie...
I'm not going to be comparing the movie to the actual facts here, but if you want to like they go, fact check me on the movie, go for it.
They just go way further in till they get to the point where the sign says, like, the gates of hell. I didn't realize.
The sign doesn't say the gates of hell.
Oh, what does it say?
It says abandon all hope ye who enter.
Oh.
Because that's what the literal gates of hell are supposed to say before you enter them.
Well, okay. I had no idea that the actual entrance to this place said that on there.
The entrance is literally called the gate of hell. So, and it's been called that since then.
That is crazy.
Yeah. So aside from a little break in moving remains during the French Revolution, they basically moved remains for around 80 years. So only Napoleon was the one who was like powerful enough to stop moving this shit. The bulk of the work was done in those early 20, 30 years. And now I know this is really history heavy, but this is a really old place. And I want you guys to understand where it came from because it's very important to me that there's as much fact in here as possible because we're going to get to some of the crazy stories a little bit later. But we usually talk about like where remains are found or people who have died like in a specific spot is a recipe for being haunted. And this place is definitely that. Like Robin said, like if you want ghosts, that's how you get ghosts. So how many people call the Catacombs their home? Or well, like resting place, I guess is more apt. But it would be around 6 million people. So 6 million people. And just so you know, I'm pretty sure Paris has around 12 million people in it today. So take that in half, and that's how many dead people live below them.
That is just frightening.
6 million is an incredible number. And that's even crazier when you consider that these people are not complete. It's not like they moved their skeletons and hung them all up like standing like they're all waving at you. It's like Robin said. They arranged the bones in a very specific manner. And it's like they basically built walls of remains using like the bones as like the bricks essentially. And it's like there's a row of skulls like on the top of this wall. If you're picturing a wall that goes from like floor to ceiling in this like mine shaft basically in these caverns, it's floor to ceiling. The very top are skulls, but they're pointed away. So it's just the back of the head. So it's like smooth. And then underneath that are a bunch of rows of probably like femurs, really, really thick bone, but it's just like the end. You know, if you take a bone and you imagine a bone like in a dog's mouth, they're biting the middle of it, and there's like the rounded part on each end. Basically, all you see is the rounded part.
Yeah.
And they're all stacked in multiple rows. It's very, very symmetrical. It's kind of pleasing to the eye if you ignore the fact that it's comprised of
a bunch of dead bodies.
Former human beings.
Yeah.
And you get down a little bit, and then there's another row of skulls, like a belt almost, except these ones are facing out. So they're the skulls that you would imagine.
Are there different designs as you go along, though?
They're all pretty similar.
Okay.
But it's like they all vary in how many rows of femurs or humeruses that you're going to have before you get to your row of skulls. It's like which artist came
in that day to stack
Yeah, they're
them.
like, you know what? I think I'm going to do a double belt of human skulls with like a little bit of humerus in the middle. But yeah, so it's like head to toe is human skulls. And there's like a row that looks like weird bones. I think it may be jaws. And it just depends on where you are in the catacombs. And like, it just depends on which bones they were using at the time, too. And I think they kind of documented the area in which the family member that you're supposed to be visiting is. But that could all be bullshit, too. I wait for Robin to make a not-so-humorous pun, but I wrote humorous as the bone, which you didn't. So I'm so proud of you.
Oh, yeah. No, I was thinking, I was like trying to think of a really good one.
You were trying to get there?
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll come back up sooner or later. So this place is an incredibly long maze with bones in it that are possibly over 1,000 years old. And some are confirmed to be from the year 1200 or a little bit later. So they're literally over 800 years old.
That's jaw-dropping.
That one wasn't bad. Okay. So what would you use a place like that for once you've moved all the bones? Well, in World War II, the French resistance would hide out in it. And many of the Germans initially were afraid to traverse the catacombs for a multitude of reasons. Some because you can supposedly hear the disembodied wailing of spirits, unhappy at their transition from one eternal resting place to another. The other, the more pragmatist approach to this, is that the system of caves and tunnels is so extensive, it's a perfect place to either be ambushed, because the French resistance was hiding down there a lot, or simply just get lost. And that's something that we're going to talk about is people get lost in these catacombs, and that's one of the main reasons why they're so terrifying.
Okay.
So that fear didn't keep them out for too long, though. The Nazis eventually not only searched the catacombs, but built bunkers down there. And there's still one very famous bunker that you can go visit. It's like remnants of it. It's not exactly like you're going to walk into like a functioning Hydra place. Like there's no Red Skull shit down there. But so what is this horrific, terrifying place used for today? Well, you probably already know, and if you don't, you've probably guessed it. It's tourism. It's like when you're riding Pirates of the Caribbean, you get to that part with the bed that has the skull on like the headboard, And every time you go through that ride, someone always whispers to someone else, like, that's actually a real skull.
And it happens every single boat ride.
Every single boat ride.
Someone says it.
Which it did used to be. I'm pretty sure they've replaced it at this point, but it did used to be a real human skull.
Well, I think a lot of them used to be real bones, and then they took them all out, and that's the only one that's left.
Yeah, that was supposed to be the last one, but I think they've changed it. But imagine that, like 6 million, like times 6 million. Like that's how much you're looking at, like a tourism place where it's all about the bones. So you could really call this place the Bone Zone if you wanted to.
Oh my God.
But I'm going to refrain from doing that. So, in fact, most of the information I just gave you comes directly from the website for the Catacombs of Paris.
How much is a ticket?
You can purchase a ticket is the exact next line, where you can purchase a ticket for 32 American dollars or 29 euros.
So cheap.
For priority access. And if you want to take your children, because who wouldn't want to take their children, ages 4 to 17, it's only 5 euros. Keep in mind, up to 17, you only pay 5 euros to get in, or $5.50. So that is how much it would translate to in American dollars.
Take your kids.
It's just such a wonderful vacation spot. It is a constant temperature of 57 degrees,
Ooh.
making it literally, for me, the perfect temperature. I wish our house was 57 degrees at all times. So
the other night you were saying it's cold. Earlier today you were saying it's cold.
I was just saying it to make you feel better about the fact that you're always cold.
You're a fucking liar.
So that doesn't stop people from just, going in. Like, why would they pay that astronomical price when they can just sneak into 185 miles of underground tunnels lined with the bones of 6 million dead bodies?
How to be spirited away 101.
Seriously. And, people have been sneaking in for a really, really long time. Graffiti in the catacombs dates back to the French Revolution, which is like the late 1700s, early 1800s. That's how long people have been graffitiing down there, which just makes me picture a fully decked out head-to-toe Napoleon Bonaparte in these catacombs with a can of spray paint,
Bonaparte?
Drawing dicks.
Bonaparte?
Yeah, you totally stole my joke.
Oh.
You just ignored my joke and just stole it right out from under
okay.
me. But yeah, I picture Bonaparte and is fully, I don't know if you call him fatigues, but is his dressed wear, drawing dicks with spray paint in this catacombs. And then I put Vive la Revolution.
All I know is earlier Adam kept searching how to say revolution of dicks.
I have, fun side note as my next bullet point, revolution of dicks translates to revolution de dicks. So, in case you are wondering, if you want to go on a revolution of spray painting dicks everywhere, that's what you should call it.
Dicks.
And people don't just go down there to vandalize shit. Some go down there to steal shit, as in bones. There's nothing else down there to steal, which is very, very gross, and I hope you get haunted. You're stealing someone's, corpse. Why would you do that? Some folks go down there just to explore, some to camp out, some to bone. Get it, bone? So... There have been locations unknown to authorities for years uncovered that were eventually found and were being used as either meeting places or gathering spots for an unknown amount of years by an unknown amount of people. How badass of a meeting place is a hidden part of the Paris catacombs? It doesn't matter if
Imagine all the occult meetings you could have.
Yeah. But it's consecrated, so, how well would that go?
Yeah.
I put it doesn't matter if you're having a bake sale, it just takes it up a notch if you're doing it in the Paris catacombs, because location.
Okay, so how's Halloween? Halloween must be absolutely swamped.
I'm sure it is, and I'm sure the Paris police or the Parisian police have their hands full when it comes to Halloween, but I don't know how often they, how much... the folks in Paris celebrate Halloween,
Yeah.
My cultural ignorance is high enough where I'm not sure how Halloween is celebrated over in Paris.
I have no idea. I have no idea how holidays work.
So there's even secret underground pools in the catacombs that some folks locate and use to go swimming. And let's be real, if you're going all the way down there illegally and you find these pools and you're not going skinny dipping,
no, but
you're doing it wrong.
What if they're not good? What if they're evil pools of water? What if there's
evil
spirits
pools
in
of
there?
water.
What if there's spirits in there, or just, I watched this movie the other day where this pond had spirits in it, and it just dragged you in. And
was it Amy Pond? I'd let her drag me in. What up, Karen Gillan? You're awesome.
Oh my gosh. Okay, but yeah,
again, consecrated ground. So evil spirits, don't know, but you can't leave things consecrated forever. You consecrate it, then you put 6 million bodies on it. It's really hard. You have to have a really powerful consecration at that point. So And this is just the amateur stuff I'm talking about. Like, these are things that are known. Like, kids and teenagers, I shouldn't say kids, but teenagers and, like, early 20s, like, college students, they go down into hidden sections in the caverns and the caves, and they have fucking raves. Like, they go down there and they just party their balls
Silent raves
off.
or, like, real...
No, like, raves. Like, they go fucking crazy. They have music blaring. They probably have strobe lights everywhere. There's titties everywhere. There's balls hanging out.
How do you know?
I've seen pictures that people have taken of raves in the catacombs, which, again, I will post on our Instagram.
Oh my gosh.
No titties or balls, just the raves.
But oh my gosh, okay. This is the most interesting topic. Here
are some examples. You are the most involved you've been in a long time. 2004, in Paris, the police were exploring. This is 100% true, by the way. The police were exploring an uncharted part of the catacombs. They saw a sign that felt a little out of place that read, "Building site, no access." And they're like, what the F is this? So they just kept going. And then they noticed a camera that was set up in the catacombs that appeared to be recording them as they were walking further and further in. And then the sound of dogs barking rang out through the cavern. And it was apparently a recording that was triggered because they were getting close to something. So it's like a security system that someone set up down there. And they just kept going. And what do they wind up finding? A 500 square meter fucking metric system, I wish we just switched to it, or 5,400 square foot cavern.
Whoa, that's huge.
That was decked out. It had chairs, projection equipment, a giant cinema screen.
Oh my God.
A fully stocked bar. It was like segmented off, and there was another quote unquote room, which was the restaurant, which had its own tables and chairs.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, and like, this is underground. Like, this is straight up doing an underground secret society correctly. And they found it, like, not abandoned. It seemed to be fairly active. And even more bizarre is it had been fully powered with electricity that was being pulled from the grid of Paris. And it had 3 separate phone lines running to it.
No one noticed?
So these motherfuckers were down there, like, taking reservations. Like, oh, yeah, hello? What's that? Dinner and a movie? And you'd like to eat popcorn and drink wine out of skulls? Sounds great. Got you down for the old Catacomb Friday night special. See you then.
Oh my God.
Like, they had 3 fucking phone lines. What do you need 3 phone lines for?
One for the security system, one to just receive regular calls, one specifically for the VIP reservations.
It must be. And the thing about the catacombs is they had to leave. It's not like the Paris police can just stay down there and chill there. I mean, I would. And they had like a bunch of fucking like horror movies down there.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm like, I'm surprised that they didn't
pictures?
stay down there and like watch. I'm going to try and find pictures of it. I found all the articles when they found this. So they wound up leaving. And after the discovery was made, they like confiscated some shit, went back up like daylight side, and got someone from the French Board of Electricity to go down there with them. Because they're like, we need to know how they're tapped into the grid because it's fully powered. And they had no idea how they pulled this off, and no one noticed. So they returned 3 days later. All of the cables had been cut that were plugging into the grid. And there was a note laying on the floor that simply read, quote, "Do not try and find us." That is it.
That's so cool.
They still have no idea who the fuck set this place up. They just know that they basically found the coolest restaurant / bar / theater underground in the catacombs in Paris. And I'm saying this, it's 2019. It's been 15 years. I fucking bet you someone else has found another underground cavern that no one knows about. And I hope you're listening to this fucking podcast. Invite us. It would be so goddamn cool. And we will go. I will be terrified, but we will go. So, was that note signed with a dick? We'll never know. But the truth is out there. Viva la revolution!
No. It's Revolution de Dix.
Revolution de Dix. So, is all the stuff about the catacombs just skinny dipping, drinking, movies, titties? Well,
oh my God.
No, not exactly.
You had way too much fun with this topic.
I never wrote titties in my script. That's just where my head's at right now. I apologize.
Oh my God.
So, in 2017, this is 100% true, 2 boys, ages 16 and 17, meaning they could have paid $5 fucking to go in there if they wanted to, but they chose not to. They decided they were going to venture into the catacombs alone. Now, even though the Gate of Hell is the official main entrance, there are other entrances, like secret entrances, because it's just a system of caverns and mines that connect to certain things like sewers and other systems that run underneath Paris that I'm not aware of.
Kind of like, what is that one movie?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
No.
They're
The
heroes
Vinci
in a half
Code.
shell.
Da Vinci Code.
Yes, kind of like that, I guess.
Isn't there a point where they run through the catacombs?
They're not in Paris in that movie, no. I'm pretty sure they're not.
What about the second one?
They're in...
they're in Rome.
They're in Rome. I was going to say London, but yeah, they're in Rome.
Then the first one must be in Paris. I don't know. Whatever.
They're all over the place in that movie. But, okay, I'm pretty sure they don't go in the catacombs, though. I'll have to rewatch it. But anyways.
I'm down. I love that movie.
Two boys, 16 and 17, decide they're going to venture in here. They're not going to pay the money. It's $5 dues. $5 dues to someone that age may as well be $5 dues to me right now because I'm fucking broke. Seriously. But...
my bank's been negative for like 2 weeks.
You need to tell me these things. I'm not that broke. So, after entering the nearly 150-mile section of catacombs that are closed to the public, they got lost.
Were they prepared, though? Did they have water, food, anything?
I don't know. But here's what I'm going to tell you. Someone knew that they were down there and alerted the police to the fact that they had not returned home when it had been too long and that they were in the catacombs in the, not supposed to be there section. So the folks in the police
yes, that section.
gathered up some dogs for hunting for people and went looking. It took them 3 days to find these kids.
Oh no.
But they were eventually found. They were not dead. But these dingleberries must have gone in pretty unprepared because when they found them, they had to be rushed to the hospital because they were hypothermic.
Ooh.
Yeah, that 57-degree thing is pretty badass.
Yeah. Imagine at night and
3 straight days down there with apparently no blankets or jackets. Take a jacket. Your mom tells you to take a jacket. She should have told you to stay out of the fucking catacombs too, apparently. And maybe she did and you just didn't listen to her because she apparently didn't take a fucking jacket either. So,
oh my God.
They were hypothermic. But just picture that. I've done a lot of stupid shit in my day, especially when I was younger, especially when I was 16 or 17. I think a lot of our listeners have done stupid shit also. And a lot of it when we were teenagers. And imagine going into these catacombs with no lighting except for whatever you take with you. You're not going to an illuminated section of the catacombs, and it's just you and your best friend. And I'm just imagining it's his best friend, because why'd you go down there with somebody you don't really like for 3 fucking days? But you're in the section that no one goes into except maybe the older, cool kids who go down there for raves and shit. But you don't really know the place that well. They're probably going down there so they can be cool and find a place that they can take girls or boys or whatever and look impressive. And you start exploring. And the thing about these catacombs is they aren't all a uniform height. They occasionally narrow and they occasionally widen, like we talked about, like the theater.
I would get so claustrophobic.
It's very claustrophobic, and sometimes when it narrows, it does so to the point that you're going to have to army crawl your way through a narrow passage.
Way.
It's horrifyingly narrow. For anyone who is claustrophobic, this is literally hell for you, And you explore for who knows how long, maybe an hour or two, maybe longer, depending on how ballsy you are. And eventually, though, you go to head back. And you're going to get to an intersection, and you're pretty sure you know the way you went, so you keep heading back, and you keep heading back. And then you hit a moment in this pure darkness, illuminated by whatever you took with you, where you start to realize we're not going the right way. And every way you turn, it just leads to more catacombs, and you are lost. And whoever it was who tipped off the police saved those 2 kids' lives, straight up. And I only hope that they had a light source that didn't go out, or else they were in the darkness of the catacombs, which is literally a giant maze.
Imagine that
in
nightmare.
the dark for God knows how long. And they were together, so at the very least they didn't leave each other.
But the wind and all the sounds that go through the catacombs, you're just hearing what sounds like ghosts talking, but it's just wind, but you're in the dark, so it freaks you out.
The sound you hear in the catacombs, and I didn't pull it because the video that I found that it's on has someone talking over it because he's an asshole. But we're going to get to that next. That's the next thing we're going to talk about. It is literally like a howling wind that's blowing through that sounds like someone wailing. And it is haunting, in every sense of the word. People should just go down there and record that sound and just use it for any haunted, spooky thing that they can find. Because it is something that will drive you crazy. I can't imagine being down there for 3 fucking days.
Those kids were probably traumatized afterwards.
Not sure whether or not someone's coming to get you. After the second day, you're I'm going to die here. I'm going to die here and no one's ever going to find me. That must be such a horrible, horrible feeling. And it, didn't wind up that way. They wound up getting saved. They had to go to the hospital. They wound up being okay. But that was 2017, I believe.
There have been people, though, that have gone down there and were not saved.
And that's what we're going to end on. So, imagine going down there alone. And that's going to bring us to one of the most famous and controversial events to take place in the catacombs of Paris. It took place in the early 1990s, apparently. And I say apparently because, and take this with a grain of salt, a group of explorers were traveling the catacombs in the late 1990s, and they discovered on the ground a video camera. And it is said that it had been down there a while, and it was supposedly covered with grime and dust and mold, like it had been on the ground of the caverns for some time. They eventually got home, and they took this video camera with them, and they got the video off of it. And this video not only exists, and you can see it, if you hunt enough on YouTube, you might be able to find the uncut video, but you can definitely find the documentary that was filmed about this video, because it was footage of someone who went down to the catacombs alone. The only light that they had was on the video camera, and during this they talk about the fact that they have been down there. It's a single person who's exploring, and if you really want to know how haunting and creepy this place is, try and find this video. So he wanders the tunnels and passages for a while, and even states while he's doing it that he's been down there many, many times in the past. It's like he's just making a video of places that he's been to. And he goes all over the place. And he winds up finding these new places, and he winds up like looking into these rooms that it's like there's a crack in the wall, like in a Zelda game. You know, and you can just kind of look through it, and they're just chambers filled with bones. And they're like narrow corridors and shit. And like whether or not, and this is the big debate, whether or not this is fake, this dude went down there, and like that's where they found the camera, and the footage is of places that are actually in the catacombs. And as time goes on, the guy starts to realize that he does not know where he is. He's in new places, and he's in this underground labyrinth that is the catacombs of Paris, and that is a very bad thing when you're finding new places at this point. Because as this video shows, he winds up realizing that he does not know how to get back. And the more he explores, the more frantic he seems to become. And the longer the video goes on, the more you begin to hear that really, really creepy sound. To the point where near the end of the video, it's just like all you hear. And it's loud. Which to me means he might be getting close to the exit or an entrance or something like that. But it sounds like wind blowing. And it has this really ominous feeling to it, where it sounds like people moaning. And it's really easy to understand why people think the guy in this video went crazy. And at some point, he finds what is a dead end. And I just got cold chills thinking about it. I'm going to put it on the Instagram. With what looks like, it's like a dead end that almost looks like the wall is made of dirt. And it's a skeleton in the wall. That's almost like a full skeleton posed in like the Vitruvian Man.
What?
Yeah, it's creepy as fuck, dude. And he turns around, he goes a different way. And after that, he starts walking through more passageways that have like water in them, and you can see like his feet splashing as he's walking.
I think I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can hear this guy breathing heavier and heavier, and he starts picking
starting
up his
to panic.
pace. He's starting to freak out, and maybe he was just panicking. But the documentary that was made about it posits that like something in the catacombs scared him, and he started to walk faster and faster, like he was trying to get away from something. And then he starts running.
I'm starting to freak out right now.
And this guy who only has his camera for light, the light on his camera, is just booking it. And then he drops his camera and it hits the ground, and you see a splash of water as his foot like hits the ground, and then he's gone. He just continues on down the cave. He just abandons his camera, and that's where they found the fucking camera. So whether or not it's real or is this just giant hoax, it is really, really well done. It is super creepy. They have this documentary about it. They had it on all these channels. And it's one of these things that people go to and they're like, whether or not it's real doesn't mean that people haven't done exactly what this guy did and gotten lost and no one ever saw them again.
And no one's ever come forward and been like, that's me.
Yeah. Which makes it seem like the guy got lost down there and he never got out. And that's the thing. Like, I thought about this. I got a little bit upset thinking about this because I was like, there are people out there who don't have a lot of people, you know, that could literally just disappear and no one would notice. And I was thinking about what that would be, what kind of a life that would be like to live that solitude and how lonely that would be, and the amount of panic that would set in when you realize you're lost down there.
Yeah.
No one's going to call the police. No one's going to say, hey, my friend down there needs help.
I'm like triggered right now.
Seriously, like it triggered me when I was thinking about it. And I honestly was thinking about my brother. And I was just like, I can't imagine what would happen if my brother was down there and he got lost. Because my brother just goes crazy places, you know? And I'm like, if he wound up in Paris in the catacombs and I wouldn't know, how the hell would he get help? And I was like, maybe he had a camera. You know, maybe that's what this guy was and he got out. He's like, fuck that. I'm never coming forward. I don't want people to ask me questions about this. So I was like, think happy thoughts. The guy totally got out. But people think that it very well could have been fake. And that they faked it so they could set up this documentary so they could get like more attention to it. But if they faked it, it seems like they really played the long game, because it really does seem like this footage was down there for a very long time. Or it could just be part of this story that a lot of people were in on. And, of course, Zach Bagels and co. have visited the catacombs and weighed in on it, and I'm fairly certain that Zach went blind or deaf at some point. And I can't remember which, because I get that dude's bullshit mixed up, plus I never watch his show. But who knows? The footage could be fake. There could have been a guy who knew the catacombs who just decided to make this creepy video, but he wasn't part of this documentary and he left this video down there, you know? Like, that's some shit that I could see someone doing. Like, I'm going to wander around and film these creepy rooms that I know and then act scared and then just drop the camera, you know? And this predates Blair Witch, too.
Well, and then was it before GPS, or does GPS not just...
I think GPS existed, but I don't think it would work underground like that, especially not in the 90s. So it's really, really hard to tell whether or not this is real. The footage itself definitely inspired the movie, As Above, So Below. And all that I can say is that of all the places that we've researched that I would like to visit, I think this is one that I would probably definitely want to take the regular tour.
Yeah.
Rather than the real underground tour, unless the Illuminati and Anonymous hit us up and they're like, yo, we're going to have a special viewing. It's going to be really fun if you guys want to come. Like, yeah, we'll go.
5,000 square foot sweet-ass restaurant.
But, like, my rave days are behind me, and I can just skinny dip in the hotel pool in Paris rather than, like, down in the catacombs, so I'm not going to worry about that. So I think if we don't get reached out to by those, like, secret society folks, we should make this, like, our 20,000 patron goal or something like that, because it's a trip to Paris, which ain't fucking cheap, unless you're Peter, who doesn't listen. That's my friend whose boyfriend's taking him to Paris. I'm so happy for him. They leave next Wednesday, and he's like, I'm so excited. But yeah, so that's another reason why I kind of decided I was going to switch to this one, because I was thinking about Paris a lot today. But yeah, that is a lot of stuff, I know.
It's a cool episode, or a cool topic.
It only kind of scratches the surface of what we know, but it's what I can definitely confirm. And that, my spooky friends, are the Catacombs of Paris.
Nice, good job.
There you go.
Nice and entertaining.
Thank you. And now Robin is going to just blow your fucking mind.
Well, I'm going to crank it down to depressing. Okay.
Right on.
That was a really good topic. I really enjoyed that one.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to be covering John Wayne Gacy. And he has to be one of the most renowned American serial killers. Like, I think most people, when they hear that, they immediately know, you know, he's the clown killer or whatever.
I knew that about him, and I realized earlier today I've never seen him in clown makeup. And I realized that because Robin, when she's doing her research, sends me pictures for the Instagram for tomorrow. And she's like, hey, I sent something to you. Tell me if it worked. And I went to it, and it's just a fucking picture of him in clown makeup. And I was like, why would you send me that? Like, I opened it, and I looked at it. He looked at my eyes. It's just super, super creepy.
Yeah, he's just absolutely horrible, just a creep. And if you guys haven't heard of him before, you're about to. So strap in, friends, because this clown is anything but fun.
So he's a sad clown.
I don't think he was a sad clown when he did his acts, but he sure makes everyone else sad. So Gacy was born on March 17th, 1942, so quite a long time ago, in Chicago, Illinois. He was the middle child of John Stanley Gacy, who was an auto repair machinist and World War I vet, and a Marion Elaine Robinson, who was a homemaker. And
Cuckoo, could you, Mrs. Robinson?
Okay, is that like a 50 Shades type thing?
No, it's a song. It's from The Graduate.
Oh, okay. I've watched that movie recently, and she calls the chick Mrs. Robinson.
There's a reason. Like, they're referencing a character from the movie The Graduate whose name is Mrs. Robinson.
Okay, I did not know that.
Who seduces a very, very, very young Dustin Hoffman.
Interesting. I'm glad I haven't watched that movie. Sounds weird.
You've never watched The Graduate?
No.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so you've never seen Pretty Woman. What's wrong with you?
They don't show Pretty Woman in Filmland. That's all I'm saying. Okay. They show The Graduate.
Anyway, so Gacy had quite a rough time growing up. He was not the athletic type and had a heftier build, though it didn't help that he had a heart condition that prevented him from doing any rigorous activity, so it's not really his fault. Although he was close to his mother and his sisters, his father was an alcoholic who was physically abusive to the family. And I don't know if that has to do with the fact that he's a World War I vet or
has
what.
All that trauma.
Yeah, PTSD, it's a thing. Gacy's father always called him a sissy or a mama's boy. And all Gacy really wanted to do was to make his father proud, which is super sad. And in this situation, you can discern that it really wasn't an easy thing to do. According to Gacy, one of his earliest childhood memories were of his father beating him with a belt for messing up how his father had organized some engine components. So he came in, messed up some stuff, so his dad beat him for it.
So he was being a kid, like playing with stuff, and his dad beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, his dad's also hit him in the head and knocked him unconscious with like a broomstick before. His dad just kind of looked at him as the failure child, you know, and he called him dumb and stupid and that he was never good enough. Like, this would cause self-confidence issues in anyone. I mean, not everyone treated this way would become a serial killer, but it's a really rough way to grow up. And despite this hostile growth environment, I guess, Gacy always denied ever hating his father, ever.
It's because he's worked his whole life to try and, like, make his dad proud. Like, for some reason, in scenarios like that, people don't wind up hating them. They still wind up loving them and trying to make them proud.
And they're
it's bizarre.
And it's just absolutely rough. And I mean, I've been on the receiving end of feeling like I'm never good enough, and I can totally relate. Like, it's just a hard way to grow up. And what's even worse is that in 1949, at the age of 7, he was molested by a family friend. So this kid just has had to deal with so much bullshit.
By the age of 7, he's had an incredibly rough life.
Yeah, and he never told his father about what happened. He had such a bad complex that he thought that his dad would blame him for it. And I hate when that happens to kids, because that happens a lot more often than you think. And I wish there was a way to make it so kids know that it's safe to tell someone what's going on in their lives and not just taking everything on themselves, because I don't think that's healthy. Yeah, I wish there were a way to make kids feel safe. Gacy grew up as an unfortunate target of bullying. He would turn to volunteering for the school's authority figures, running errands and things like that, because he was just kind of like an outcast. And during the 4th grade, he started experiencing blackouts, which in and of itself is scary.
Yeah, that's like, I would not know what to do with myself. I was like losing time, basically,
right.
Where I was just blacking out.
He also suffered from seizures and had his appendix burst, which is why I was talking to you about it either. I'm just waiting for my ticking time bomb to go off in there somewhere.
You think you're going to have your appendix burst?
I don't know. You never know. It happens to anyone. What I was trying to look up earlier, what makes it happen? Is it something you eat? Is it something you drink over a long span of time that just inflames it and it just makes it want to pop?
Sometimes it just goes.
I mean,
like, it doesn't happen to everyone. Like, it's originally an organ that was created to, like, grind up, like, stuff you're not supposed to really eat. Like, it's something we don't really use, you know?
Yeah.
So it's sometimes because it's not being used, and sometimes because it was used, or it's just hard to tell what's going to make your appendix.
We just got to eat all the shit and see.
No, don't do that. Some guy at work just had his appendix get fucked up on him, and it was, like, really bad, and he almost died. So it's like, it's a serious thing. Like, if your appendix bursts, like, you are very close to dying.
So if you folks are having a lot of abdominal pain, get it checked out before it blows up. All right. So due to all of his medical issues, he missed out on school, and throughout high school, he kind of declined. So he missed all this school because of going to the hospital all the time, and he just wasn't focused. And his dad looked at all of it as a desperate attempt at getting his attention. And he even accused him of faking it, which is so messed up. Yeah, you can fake
your appendix exploding.
But despite his numerous hospitalizations, his illness was never conclusively diagnosed. So you don't really know, did he actually fake it all or not? And I think that's really odd. One of Gacy's high school friends recalled how ruthless his father was to him. Like, he witnessed how much he beat him and just yelled at him for no reason. And Gacy never defended himself against his father's attacks. He would just take it. And it's just so depressing. As an adult, Gacy continued to have issues with his father. At one point, he moved out to Las Vegas, where he worked for an ambulance service and then transferred to work as an attendant at Palm Mortuary for 3 months before returning to Chicago. And while he worked at the mortuary, he would sleep on a cot behind the embalming room. And he confessed to climbing into a coffin at one point of a deceased teenage male in a super pervy, creepy fashion. Like, not at all healthy. And not that just joining a dead body in a coffin isn't creepy enough, but he just was over the top about it. And supposedly this is what spurred his return home. Something triggered in him. He's like, I gotta go home. So he called his dad, or he called his mom and asked his mom, like, hey, can I come back? And the mom asked the dad, and the dad's like, yeah, whatever. So he goes back to Chicago, enrolls at Northwestern Business College, without a high school diploma. So he never graduated high school. Wow. But he went to college, and I might add, and he graduated in 1963.
Wow.
So even John Wayne fucking Gacy graduated at 21, and I'm freaking turning 30 in a couple weeks. Damn it.
You're gonna be fine.
So he even joined a group called the Jaycees, or the United States Junior Chapter, and it's a group that focuses on business development and management skills. So I think he was pretty motivated. He went out and did all these things. Graduating so quickly is impressive. He went through a couple positions at the Nunn-Bush Shoe Company, eventually getting...
The what?
The Nunn-Bush Shoe Company.
There's a lot of jokes in there, but I'm not going to say them. I'll just let you keep going.
Okay. He eventually got promoted to management, and in March of 1964, he got engaged to a Marlyn Myers. Marilyn? Maybe it's Marilyn Myers. But this was a surprise to me because I had no idea that he had ever been married before. Because I have heard about the people he's murdered, and it just didn't mix.
You typically don't get serial killers painted in the portrait of like they were a human being, because it's too terrifying to think of the fact that at some point they almost lived a normal life, you know?
Yeah.
And this is just another really good example for anyone who's lonely out there, or anyone who hasn't had a boyfriend or a girlfriend, that there is someone out there for everyone, because John Wayne fucking Gacy got married, and that
Twice.
Dude... Oh my God. So you're going to be fine. Just be patient is all I'm saying.
All right. So anyway, they got married September of that same year. So engaged in March, married in September. Her father bought 3 KFC establishments, Kentucky Fried Chicken establishments, in
It's a good investment right there.
Yeah, in Waterloo, Iowa, where the newlyweds
Waterloo,
moved to.
Napoleon. Oh my God, these overlap so much.
So Gacy took over managing these locations and was given a salary of what equates to about $120,000 in today's money.
Get the fuck out of here.
Plus a portion of the profits.
Now I can feel bad about how good John Wayne Gacy was doing.
So through all this, he was going up the ranks in the Jaycees, in that business group, doing a lot of work for them. And by 1967, he was on the board of directors for the Waterloo chapter of them. He had 2 children with Marilyn, Michael in 1966 and Christine in 1967. Gacy described this period of his life as perfect. He finally earned the approval of his father. His father came and was like, I was wrong about you, son. Like,
wow.
Yeah, this period of his life to him was absolutely perfect. The downside to the Jaycees of Waterloo, though, were they were all scummy, like bad influence people. Gacy frequently cheated on his wife with local sex workers and even opened a club in his basement where his employees could drink and play pool. He only socialized with his younger male employees, though, because he is obviously not so into the ladies. And
I didn't realize that was obvious until you just said that.
Oh, okay. That's why I didn't realize he was married. It's just because I've known about Gacy for so long. That's the only reason why.
You're like, obviously, these knowledge in my brain also exists in your brain.
So Gacy would get them drunk and then make advances towards them. Then when they were like, whoa, bro, chill, he'd just pass it off as a joke or as a test of their morals, which is super messed up. How that works, I don't even know. Would you quit if someone did that to you? If your boss did that to you?
Yeah, probably.
It's just mind-blowing to me that he would just say, oh, it was just a joke, you know? In August...
It would definitely be a huge, huge red flag. Like, something here is seriously wrong.
Oh, I'm just thinking of Horrible Bosses now and Jennifer Aniston, because you've
never seen that movie, but yeah, she's always making a pass at Charlie Day, and like... It is very inappropriate, but Jennifer Aniston is also very, very hot in that movie. So
if it were a hot dude doing that, you'd be okay with it?
If it was a hot dude making a pass at me, I'm very confused.
So if John Wayne Gacy were ridiculously super duper hot and he was making pass at these kids, you'd be like, no, but
it's still super fucking creepy.
Okay, see, so it's just... It doesn't...
I've always told you, like, that movie just portrays, like, how an absolutely beautiful woman doing and saying incredibly horrible things can just come off as a fucking creep. And she is in that movie, and it's hilarious because it's nothing like any of her other characters.
It's just so wrong, and I would definitely quit. I would get out of that house so fast, no matter how plastered I was. Oh my God. In August of 1967, Gacy committed his first known, keyword known, sexual assault on a teenage boy. So he might have done it before then. You don't really know. Donald Voorhees was only 15 and was a fellow JC, so he was in the club with them. Gacy lured him into his home with some sweet, sweet prawn and got Voorhees drunk. And it's just so, kids, I mean, if you are this age, if you're young and you're just starting to go through all that stuff, porn is not worth it. It's free on the internet.
So you're recommending people watch porn alone in the safety of their own home than having some creepy old dude being like, would you like to watch some porn?
Yeah, absolutely. Watch it at home alone.
I feel like this one is pretty self-explanatory, but if you needed Robin to point that out for you, I really, really hope you listen.
Okay. So he persuaded him to perform oral sex on him. Over the following months, he abused a number of others in a similar fashion. He even tricked a few into believing that he was conducting homosexual experiments for quote-unquote scientific research, paying up to $50. I don't even...
That is just like a con that it takes a very drunk person or a very susceptible person to fall for.
Yeah, or someone that's desperate for money, you know? In March of 1968, so several months later, Voorhees reported the sexual assault to his father, who then reported it to the police and got Gacy arrested. And Gacy, of course, denied it, but polygraph tests showed that he was nervous whenever denying any wrongdoing. So it's pretty sketch. Even if it's not definitive, if you're nervous about it, there's something going on that's making you nervous. So he hired a man named Russell Schroeder to assault Voorhees to prevent him from testifying. And Schroeder did go through with the assault, but Voorhees was able to escape and was able to identify his attacker. So Schroeder got arrested and then totally threw Gacy under the bus, which is the right thing to do. And doctors examined Gacy over 17 days, concluding that he had an antisocial personality disorder, which incorporates sociopathy and psychopathy. So this guy is just...
He's a sociopath and a psychopath.
Yeah. They reported that he was unlikely to benefit from any type of therapy or medical treatment, and that he would have repeated instances.
So they're telling people at this point, like, this is going to happen again.
Yeah. So he was convicted on December 3rd, 1968, and was sentenced to 10 years in Anamosa State Penitentiary. His wife petitioned for divorce the same day of his sentencing, and their divorce was finalized in September of the next year. Apparently, during his time there, he also improved the state of conditions for the inmates, which is totally crazy. Like, he did all this stuff to get them paid more or better conditions for things.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know this. Like, almost any of this that you've told me so far
really?
About John Wayne Gacy, yeah.
He must have been just ridiculously charismatic. He even got his high school diploma there. So he did a lot while in prison, apparently. On Christmas Day of 1969, his father died of cirrhosis of the liver, but Gacy's request to leave to go to his father's funeral was denied. Which is absolutely rough.
Of all the funerals to deny, like, that guy dying was such an important milestone in Gacy's life.
Gacy only served 18 months, so he did all that stuff in 18 months.
A 10-year sentence, he served 18 months and then was out? Wow.
Before being granted parole with 12 months probation. The rules was he had to move in with his mother and move to Chicago and had a 10 p.m. curfew. Not long after, in February of 1971, he was charged yet again for assaulting a teenage boy. Unfortunately, the boy never came to court that day, so nothing came of the case.
You gotta wonder if he hired someone else
to like off him or something,
or to intimidate him into not showing up.
Right. He was making money. He was making bank. Gacy bought a house with his mother at 8213 West Summerdale Avenue in Norwood Park Township in some unincorporated part of Cook County. And this would become the location of where all the murders were committed. In August of 1971, Gacy became engaged yet again. This time it was to Carol Hoff, who was divorced with 2 daughters. Apparently, they knew each other in high school. So,
wow.
Yeah, so they had already known each other. I think she was a friend of his younger sister or something.
And just a reminder, for those of you who are lonely or single out there, that sometimes there's even two people out there for you, and you just need to be patient, because John Wayne Gacy got married twice. That is fucking bananas.
Yeah. Carroll moved in, and his mother moved out, and then they were married on July 1st of 1972. So 1 year later, just about. What blows my mind is that 1 week before their wedding, he was arrested for aggravated battery and reckless conduct, having impersonated a police officer and forcing another teenager by the name of Jackie D to perform oral sex on him.
Jesus Christ.
The charges were dropped, though, when Gacy was blackmailed for money by D, so he kind of screwed himself there.
Almost like a settlement out of court, but it's straight up like blackmail instead.
D blackmailed him and was like, you better give me money or I'm going to
press charges.
And so the case was dropped because they're like, you can't fucking do that. So it was just bad move on D's part. And then they still went through with the wedding. So that was a thing. What's even worse is the first committed murder happened on January 2nd, 1972. So during their engagement. Okay, during their engagement, Gacy picked up a 16-year-old Timothy McCoy from a Chicago Greyhound bus terminal and offered him a sightseeing tour of Chicago. He then offered that McCoy spend the night and then he'll take him back to the station. Gacy reported that he woke up in the morning to find McCoy standing in his doorway with a knife. So Gacy leapt at him and McCoy surrendered but accidentally cut Gacy on the forearm. Apparently Gacy had a scar to back this up too, so he had a scar on his arm. He then twisted the knife out of his wrist and then started beating the kid. And he ended up wrestling McCoy to the floor and then stabbing him repeatedly. And he buried him in the crawl space of his home and covered it in concrete.
Jesus Christ.
According to Gacy, this murder was what made him realize that, quote, death was the ultimate thrill, end quote. And the sad part about that whole thing was that McCoy had the knife in his hand because he was cutting bacon and making breakfast for the two of them. So he was making breakfast and was going to go and wake him up. But he was just...
should have left the knife behind, apparently.
Yeah, because he was cutting bacon and stuff. So when Gacy walked into the kitchen after killing him, he was like, oh, fuck, because there's eggs there, there's bacon. He was like about to cook everything. Like, oh my God, it's so messed up. So Gacy started up his own construction business, and it actually did pretty well. But Gacy just couldn't stop his addiction. He just couldn't stop.
So after this first kill, he becomes addicted to murdering.
Yeah. So in 1973, he took one of his teenage employees, which, by the way, should be illegal for him to have, and went to Florida to check out some property. He raped him the first night in the hotel. The kid refused to stay in the hotel room after that and slept on the beach. Upon their return to Chicago, he drove to Gacy's house and attacked him in front of his family. And Gacy made up the excuse that it was just because he refused to pay the kid for crappy work, and that's why the kid attacked him. It's just so dumb. I feel like it should be illegal for him to have these young kids, considering he was in jail for assaulting one.
Right. He shouldn't be allowed near them. Well,
yeah.
Here's the thing, though. You say teenagers, they could be 18 or 19, right? So they could be legal adults, so they could be working with him.
He has a lot of employees that are like 15,
oh my
16.
God.
Around January of 1974, he killed a boy between the age of 14 and 18, they don't really know, strangling them and then burying them 15 feet from the barbecue pit in his backyard. And this victim's still unidentified. There are a few victims that are unidentified. But Gacy became active in politics and community services. He became the heads of so many different organizations. I feel like he must have been so charismatic because he got just jumped up to the bosses of so many of these.
And he was looking for positions of power to feed his ego. You know, he's a sociopath and he's a psychopath. So he knows like having power over people is the only tangible thing he can really feel at this point.
One of these was the Jolly Joker Clown Club, who performed fundraising events and parades and entertained hospitalized children. Here's where he created his clown persona, I guess.
So a persona that's also a clown?
Yes.
Clown. Is that like an actual thing that you read somewhere?
No,
clown persona,
but it's just like
calling it?
Like your furry character, you call it your fursona. So I'm just like,
I don't
your
have
clown
a furry
Sona?
character. What's a furry character?
His character was Pogo the Clown, or Patches the Clown, and he designed his own costumes and did his own makeup. Other professional clowns noted how sharp his designs were, and it made it more scary than fun because clowns normally have rounded designs around their mouths,
right.
so it doesn't freak the kids out, because then he looks like a freaking jack-o'-lantern. You know what I mean? It's frightening. My jack-o'-lanterns don't really look scary, but... So by 1975, he told his wife that he was bisexual. Then, after their last sex session on Mother's Day that year, he told her that that would be, quote unquote, the last time they would ever have sex again. So he straight up told his wife, like, no, it's never happening. Sorry. He started returning home at odd hours, saying that he had to work late. And his wife witnessed him bringing teenage boys home and then found gay pornography in the house. All this led up to the mutual divorce. I think they reported it as him cheating on her with women. They got divorced in March of 1976. And so that woman had to deal with all that bullshit for a really long time, because Mother's Day of 1975 all the way till March 1976.
Yeah, it's a while. I mean, it could be longer, but that's a while.
How do you deal with that? How do you deal with your husband telling you we're never having sex again? In 1975, Gacy just was running himself ragged because he had that construction company. It was blowing up. He was getting so much business. He was working unmanageable hours, like 12 to 16-hour days. And he was also kind of just cruising for sex opportunities with young men. So it's like this guy never stopped. And he consistently hired high school students and young men at his firm. So one of these hires was 15-year-old Anthony Antonucci. And I don't know if hiring a 15-year-old at your construction company is legal or not, but I think it should be. I think they're way too young. Isn't that child labor at that point? They're 15.
I don't know. I don't know if there's like internship
idea.
rules or if they're going to school. I don't know what the laws are there.
But anyway, it should be illegal for him anyway because he was in jail for that
him
thing.
Explicitly,
yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
In July of 1975, he went over to Antonucci's where he was alone. So Antonucci was alone because he was resting after a foot injury that he had, obtained. So he's at home, he's resting. Gacy comes over, gets him drunk, wrestles him to the floor, and then cuffs his hands behind his back. And lucky for Antonucci, one of his cuffs was loose, so he was able to free one arm when Gacy left the room. And when he got back, Antonucci wrestled Gacy to the ground, grabbed the cuff keys off of him, and then used the cuffs on Gacy. So then he was lying on the ground with his arms behind his back.
The tables turned.
Yep, because Antonucci was on the high school wrestling team. So he was just like, oh, fuck you. So what Antonucci recalled was Gacy telling him, quote, not only are you the only one who got out of the cuffs, you got them on me, end quote. How messed up is that? That he was just like...
Good job.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. A week after this assault, another of Gacy's employees disappeared. So 18-year-old John Bolkovich disappeared on July 31st, 1975. The day before, he had threatened Gacy for overdue wages. And Gacy admitted to having lured him over while his wife and stepkids were visiting family in Arkansas. And he conned him into cuffs, saying that it was a handcuff trick of sorts, right? This became Gacy's go-to way of subduing his victims. So he proceeded to strangle Bolkovich and then buried him under the concrete floor of his garage. And so Bolkovich's father called Gacy about his son's disappearance, and Gacy came up with some bullshit story, of course, that didn't make any sense. So Bolkovich's dad would call the police more than 100 times over 3 years,
wow,
urging them to investigate Gacy, because he's like, my kid worked for you, and then he disappeared. So,
when he asked you for money that you owed him, and you told him to come over.
His handcuff trick would be to, step one, get the person his intended victim, wasted. And then step two would be to clown it up, like say it's part of his clown act, and then produce a pair of handcuffs and persuade the victims to put them on. And he'd trick them, saying that they'd never get out of them, like there's no way you can get out. And once the handcuffs were on, he'd say, quote, The trick is you have to have the key, end quote. This guy's fucked up. Like, this is premeditated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very clearly.
Between 1976 and 1978, Gacy raped and murdered 25 individuals, all under the age of 22.
Oh my God.
And he buried them all over his home, which totally reminded, like, the Catacombs, just, it mixes, because his house was just bones everywhere, bodies everywhere, you know? They were under the kitchen floor, in the laundry room. There were a bunch in his crawl space. There were some under his bedroom. Anywhere you could bury something, you could probably find a body there. And Gacy's 5 final murders during 1978 were the only ones that were thrown off the I-55 bridge into the Des Plaines River. And only 4 of those bodies were ever recovered. So he said one of them must have fallen on a barge or something. But then they would have found it if it fell on a barge, you know? So I don't know.
He's full of shit.
Gacy had numerous close calls on assaults, but he was never investigated. And it's just absolutely mind-blowing. On March 1978, Gacy lured a 26-year-old Jeffrey Rignall, who is his oldest victim, into his car, where he subsequently chloroformed him, and he was raped and tortured, kept unconscious with chloroform, so as soon as he gained any type of consciousness, he'd just be put under again, but was ultimately kept alive. And Rignall was eventually able to get to his girlfriend's place. I don't exactly know how he escaped or if he was let go, but he got to his girlfriend's place where they contacted the police, who never investigated. So,
are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. So this incident irreparably damaged Rignall's liver because of the chloroform. Fortunately, he was able to remember the make and model of Gacy's car. And so he himself had to stake out a stretch of freeway with a couple of his friends. So a stretch of freeway that he knew Gacy had driven on. So Rignall, luckily, saw the car, followed him all the way to his house, and then called the police, and the police were able to issue an arrest warrant, and he was arrested on July 15th, 1978. So while he was waiting for the trial for the battery of Rignall, he was arrested in December of 1978 for all the murders. So it's just, I can't believe how much this guy got away with.
So how'd they figure out he was committing all these murders? Did they, like, search his place? Like, what happened
So
there?
on December 11th, 1978, Gacy was in a pharmacy discussing potential construction deal with the owner when he overheard a 15-year-old Robert Peist. And Gacy offered the boys $5 an hour to work for his firm, which apparently was double what they were making at the pharmacy. Because this is 1978, so I don't know what the pay scale was, but Peist told his mother about the deal and that he was going to go talk to the contractor about the job. When Peist never returned, his family filed a missing persons report, and the pharmacy owner named Gacy as the probable contractor that the boy spoke of. Gacy denied it and denied ever offering the job, and he said he'd go by the station later as his uncle had just died. At 3:20 a.m. that night, he came into the station covered in mud, claiming to have been in an accident. Gacy's lies kind of started falling apart. At this point, he'd include people in on his lies that could not be corroborated. He claimed to have returned to the pharmacy the night of the 11th because the owner had called him, and Torf, the owner, said he did no such thing. The Des Plaines police were confident that they had their guy, and they finally looked at his past records. And
so he showed up at the police station, you said at 3 a.m.?
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with this guy?
And I'll tell you why later. But they finally looked at his records and saw all his standing charges. So they saw the battery of Rignall that he was still waiting on, and they saw his prison stint for raping Voorhees way back in the day. And they ordered a search of his home where they found a lot of suspicious stuff. So,
like, that dead body doesn't go there.
Well, not the bodies yet. So they found lots of different driver's licenses. So probably from all these kids, he kept like a trophy from them.
That's so fucked up.
They found handcuffs. They found a 2x4 with holes drilled into the ends, probably to whip it faster. Because I'm pretty sure that's how the paddles work. They drill holes in it, so it's like way worse. male clothing that obviously didn't belong to Gacy because it was way too small, and a 1975 Maine West High class ring. So 1975, there's no way he graduated in 1975.
Right.
And there was just so much more. They found so much stuff that obviously was not his stuff, and it was just sketchy to find. And so everything started stacking up on top of him. Neighbors stated that after his divorce with Carol in 1976, he became even more odd than usual, leading up to his arrest in 1978. One such neighbor recalls being woken up by muffled screaming, shouting, and crying during early morning hours for years. How do you not call the police?
Yeah, seriously, man. Like, I get that it was a different time and, like, you trusted your neighbors and all that stuff, but, like, you have got to call the cops at some point when something like that is happening.
Police started putting the murders of his employees together and the random disappearances together. Items found within the home were linking to murder victims and disappearances, and there was no getting out of it this time. There was so much evidence against him. During a conversation that he had with two surveillance detectives, Gacy told them, quote, clowns can get away with murder, end quote.
Wow. Holy shit.
Like, how do you say that shit? A man named David Cram was also interviewed on December 20th, and his interview was pretty enlightening. Cram informed investigators of Gacy's attempts to rape him in 1976, and that when Gacy returned to his home on December 13th, after his initial arrest, I assume, he witnessed Gacy enter his crawl space looking for evidence of digging. When asked if he had ever been there, he said Gacy had asked Cram to spread lime there once and dig trenches 2 feet by 6 feet and 2 feet deep. So it's like the perfect size to put a body in.
Yeah, make a grave and then cover it in lime.
So what Gacy told him, though, was it's for plumbing.
Fuck off.
Yeah. And so Cram ended up testifying against him during the trial, which is totally awesome. Eventually, when he was plastered drunk, Gacy confessed to everything. And some victims he referred to by name, some he simply referred to as male prostitutes, hustlers, or liars, which is so messed up because they weren't, He abducted these people. He passed out mid-confession, and when he woke up, he didn't remember any of it. And Gacy said he knew his arrest was inevitable. He was erratic that final day. Surveillance worried he was going to commit suicide and booked him for drug possession because at one point he went to a gas station or something and gave the clerk like a bag of weed. And the clerk gave the bag of weed to the surveillance detectives like, bruh.
That's so weird.
Yeah. He was like, my time is coming or something like that. So he was like handing off whatever. Authorities were able to obtain a search warrant and immediately searched his home. Daniel Genty, the evidence tech that entered the crawl space at Gacy's home, began digging and almost immediately found remains. And upon the discovery, he remarked, quote, "I think this place is full of kids," end quote. Like, it's so messed up. What's even worse is Gacy had flooded that crawl space. So he unplugged something, flooded that whole area up, and police had to
drain it first.
Yeah, they had to drain it first. Gacy eventually admitted to 25 to 30 murders, including that of Robert Peist. So that kid from the pharmacy, he totally murdered.
That's so awful.
And what he did that morning, the reason why he showed up at 3 a.m. was he had just gotten done throwing the body over into the river. And he went to the police station afterward.
Why in the fuck would he go to the police station after that?
I think it's because he got into an accident and he needed help. I don't know. He gave up the location of the many buried bodies. He accompanied police back to his home where he showed the police everything. There were so many bodies, many of which were left unidentified. They're still unidentified. There are a lot of ideas of who they could be, but there's no definitive answer to who it actually is. And Gacy was charged with 33 murders in February of 1980. Many came to testify against Gacy, including Robert Voorhees himself, so that first assault. Gacy's defense tried to make it seem like he was mentally unfit and that he had compulsions he couldn't control.
Therefore, he shouldn't stand trial like a normal person. I get that it's to try and get him into a mental institution instead of jail, but still, like, This dude was just pure evil.
The doctors, though, just say that he has sociopathic problems. There's something wrong with him. He's not mentally unfit. Others stated that his actions were premeditated, which makes sense because he had that whole handcuff trick, and he had an MO. He would put them in cuffs and then strangle them. And it just is way too thought out for it to be a compulsion. After all the arguments were made on March 12th, the jury took less than 2 hours to deliberate and found Gacy guilty of all 33 murders.
Good.
And he was sentenced to death for 12 counts of murder. So he was transferred to Menard Correctional Center in Chester, Illinois, where he was on death row for 14 years. I did not know that they sit on death row for so long.
Yeah, they wait forever to get killed.
Gacy attempted appeals multiple times, and all of which were denied, thankfully. He was executed by lethal injection on May 9th, 1994. And he was allowed a private picnic with his family, and his last
family who would still go to see
he
this
still
guy?
Had kids.
Oh my God, that's horrific.
So, having his last meal, it was a bucket of KFC, a dozen fried shrimp, French fries, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke.
Wow. He wouldn't pop for the regular Coke. Anyone who would choose Diet Coke over regular Coke for their last meal is clearly a serial killer / sociopath / psychopath.
Yeah, if it were my last meal, I'd go for the full Coke, all the calories.
Yeah, get those calories in you before you go.
His procedure took 18 minutes, apparently because one of the chemicals solidified and got stuck, so they had to change it out or something like that. His brain, after he was executed, his brain was then removed and is in the possession of Helen Morrison, a witness for the defense. And she wanted to attempt to isolate common personality traits of violent sociopaths. So the rest of his body was cremated afterwards, but she still has the brain. During the 14 years on death row, he picked up painting. He painted a lot of clowns, many of which were himself, Pogo. His paintings have been displayed at exhibitions, probably as morbid fascination, and prices for his paintings ran from $200 to $20,000.
Get the fuck out of here.
He was able to make money off his paintings until 1985. I don't know why that changed, but Gacy claimed he just wanted, quote, to bring joy into people's lives, end quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That. After his execution, many paintings were auctioned, and many were bought only to be destroyed in a mass bonfire in June of 1994, which was attended by upwards of 300 people. So a lot of people wanted to burn that shit. In 1984, Sam Amirante, one of Gacy's defense attorneys, authored procedures that were adopted into the Missing Child Recovery Act of 1984. And he stated that his inspiration for it is the fact that during the time of Gacy's murders, there was a 72-hour waiting period before police began to look for a child.
Which was more than enough for him to do what he was going to do and kill
get rid of
them
the body.
And get rid of the body.
Yeah. Illinois removed this waiting period, and other states have adopted it as well, and all this stuff eventually leads into what we know today as an Amber Alert. So it's pretty nice that the lawyers were able to finally be like, dude, we need to do something.
Yeah, this is a broken law that we need to fix immediately.
But yeah, that is the life and ridiculously large amount of murders of John Wayne Gacy.
Wow, that is horrific. Like, I didn't realize his life. I figured his life growing up was complicated and had like a lot of stress and a lot of horrible things that happened to him, which obviously was the case. But like, I didn't know he had become so successful, and that like he
was balling.
He accidentally stumbled into killing, which I don't know if I believe that or not, and that it just became an addiction. It's just horrific how much shit he got away with, because no one would take the time to investigate, no matter how many people told them to.
Yeah.
And no one would check into the background of this guy who
it's
should
probably
not have been
because he's
allowed
wealthy.
around any of these people.
It's probably because he was wealthy that people just didn't
and he was
think of
affluent.
doing it.
Like he was in positions of power, and they're like, a guy like that wouldn't do this. Like, no, motherfucker, like that's exactly the guy who would do something like that. Like, it's terrifying to think. For me, when I hear stuff like this, I think, who are we going to be talking about in 10 years who's in that position right now, who's trying to avoid suspicion because they're doing something horrific, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like hearing these stories about guys like this, it's just like, it's hard to not picture like someone in your mind that's similar to someone you may have met. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is this person a serial killer? I think so-and-so might be a serial killer. Like, that's a serious question that I think you have to ask yourself, especially when you're a fan of true crime. You start to like look at people a little bit differently. And John Wayne Gacy's one of those guys where it's like, you might not know someone's backstory, but you know, like their success level that they project to you. And when it's like, when there's little red flags that are just like indicative of a bigger red flag, like just, okay, bottom line, don't let anyone handcuff you, like ever. I don't care what fucking trick they're about to show you. Be like, handcuff yourself. But yeah, that was a great telling of a horrific life that I am very happy has come to an end. So good stuff.
Yeah. And I cannot believe that was so recent. I mean,
94. Yeah, I was 9 years old when that happened.
Yeah, I was 5, but I had no idea that any of that stuff was even going on.
I remember hearing about him. I didn't hear about the fact that he was like the clown serial killer until I was a little bit older, which is probably good because I was already afraid of clowns.
When did it come out?
It came out around the same time, I think. So, but it was written before that. I think it might have been written after the murders took place, like after he was arrested. But I'll have to check the date on that. Stephen King's been writing books for a very long time.
Yeah, I know. So. Oh, Netflix is coming out with all his novellas.
That's cool.
Yeah, have you noticed that? Like,
I have not at all.
Okay. Yeah.
All I know is that I looked up today just because I was sitting around like, I know they just cast Randall Flagg for the new Stand movie. I was like, and I was super excited about the casting. It's Alexander Skarsgård, who's just so goddamn pretty.
Yeah,
and he's going to make such a charismatic version of Randall Flagg. I'm very excited to see it.
Well, 1966, that movie that we watched, or was it a TV show that we watched? About
1963?
1963.
And it's not called that. It's like 11/22/63.
No, 1966 on Netflix, which is...
I don't think I watched this then.
It's about the guy who kills... I don't know if he kills his wife or what, and then puts her in the well. Yeah,
that's like 1922.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it's not 1960s.
Okay, anyway, so yeah, there's that movie, and then he just came out with another movie on Netflix called
Gerald's
They
Game?
Live in the Grass.
Oh, I heard about that.
In the tall
one.
Grass or something.
And Gerald's Game was also one of his things.
Yeah, so all these novellas are Netflix originals that are coming out. Just, I mean, if you guys are interested, check it out.
Cool, good stuff. Good stuff for Spooktober or whatever we're calling it.
Yeah, Spooktober.
So, right on. For those of you who want to send us an email for a story that you have, or maybe you have like a family member, because we've had a couple people tell us about stuff like this, where it's like someone who knew a serial killer. You know what I mean? Or like brushed past them, or like was involved in some sort of true crime thing. Maybe not like directly, but like indirectly.
Yeah.
If you want to share those stories with us, we definitely want to hear them. They're fascinating. So email storytime@scarish.com. Go to our website, scarish.com, and click on Contact Us. Or you can find us on any of our social medias. Facebook.com/ScarishPodcast. @ScarishPod is Twitter, and @ScarishPodcast is Instagram. We would love to hear from you, Robin. For folks who would like to make monetary donations, how can they do so?
You can go on over to patreon.com/ScarishPodcast. I want to welcome all our new patrons that we've been getting. Thank you so much. So yeah, patreon.com/ScarishPodcast. Those are all monthly donations, and we have a whole bunch of different tiers. Tiers start at $1. Anything you guys can contribute is great. It helps us keep the podcast going. If you want to do one-time donations, you can go to ko-fi.com/ScarishPodcast. And those are one-time donations. Everything goes to helping us upgrade our studio setup. And yeah.
Cool. So I think that's just about everything we have for episode 97. We hope you enjoyed it. We're 3 away from triple digits.
I have to think of something cool for episode 100.
Yeah, I'm going to have to think of something really, really good for that too. So it's probably just going to be an hour of silence. So it's going to be an hour-long EVP, and you tell us what you hear. It's probably going to be about your car warranty.
It's just going to be us going like, la 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 la.
Nah, I don't know about that. I mean, that's what you do when you lose your place. I edit most of those out. Maybe it'll be an hour-long me editing together all the stuff I've removed from the show.
Oh, it'd be so awful.
It would be horrible.
It would be absolutely horrible. You don't want to hear that.
Hey, we're almost there, so thank you for listening to this episode. Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.